So it's October, and with October of course comes a holiday that is much beloved by many people, including myself. And in case you couldn't tell from the decorations behind me, I am of course talking about Chuck, Sum 41's third album, which was released in 2004 in October. A criminally underrated part of their discography and one of my personal favourites. I jest. I am of course actually talking about the release of 13 Voices, which was Sum 41's comeback album from 2016, also got an October release. Oh, and also Halloween is a thing. I am quite a big fan of Halloween. I love the spooky time of year, and I thought it'd be fun to make a video where I list some of my favourite Halloween things. Books, movies, general pieces of media, that sort of thing. And I've got a wildcard piece of media that I'm going to talk about at the end. It's time to get spooky. Don't actually have a book for this list because I haven't actually read that many full-on horror books. I guess Fever Dream by George R. R. Martin counts, which I liked but I didn't love. Armageddon Rad is also up for debate there, but is it really a horror story? Is it more of a mystery?
Hello, this is Editing Tom from the future. Not sure how I forgot this when I was talking about it in the video, but I have read Dracula, which definitely counts as a horror book. I even reviewed it in my Reviewing Every Book's video. Yeah, Dracula is a horror book that I've read and very much enjoyed. Recommend that for a spooky read this October.
Oh, and then of course there's the Goosebumps books that I read those all the time as a child, so I've always got a soft spot for those. I think those might be the only actual horror books that I've read. My favourite one was The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena. The one I thought was the most scary was, I think, How to Kill a Monster, because in that one the adult figures in the book willfully abandon the children. Like in most of the stories, it's like the parents are out of the picture because they're either skeptical of what the kids are telling them, or they're just oblivious to the spooky thing that's going on, or maybe they're out of town for some reason. In How to Kill a Monster, the kids are staying with their grandparents, and they are fully aware that they have a monster trapped in their house, and they live in a swamp surrounded by monsters. They're aware of the situation and the danger that themselves and the kids are in, and halfway through the book, they just drive away and leave a note on the fridge for the kids that's like, yeah, we know what's up and we're out of here. You can fend for yourselves now. See ya. When I first read it, I imagine it was probably the monster that I thought was scary, but looking back on it now, I think that was the scariest part of it. So anyway, that's the books. That's all I can give you on books, because I've read fantasy that has horror influence, but not really anything that is pure horror in book format. Maybe I'm being too finicky with the definition of the genre, but it's my video, I can do what I want. So let's move on to the movies. I have watched a fair few horror movies in my time. I'm not gonna list every horror movie that I've ever seen. There may well be a horror movie that I've seen and that I like that I do not mention in this video. It just means that there's a lot of horror movies that I've seen and I don't want to bog this video down by just going through a list of movies. I think my absolute favourite horror film is probably The Descent. That really just hones in on, you know, claustrophobia as a means to frightening you, and it works very well. The idea of getting trapped in a cave and then there's these creatures there, it is executed perfectly, and the British ending is the correct ending. Get out of here, The Descent 2. Begone. In general, I do prefer a supernatural horror to a realistic horror, just because, you know, I don't need to be reminded of the worst dregs of humanity. I get that with the news. Supernatural horror is just a little bit stranger, a little bit more fun, and I also think there's something to be said for the incomprehensible nature of the supernatural. You know, when it's a slasher and it's a guy with a knife, well, give me a knife. Now we're two guys with knives standing facing each other. We're on equal footing now. Whereas while we have, you know, folklore and mythology, if any one of us actually came face to face with a demon or a malevolent ghost, we wouldn't have the first idea what to do. There's no guarantee that a ring of salt is gonna contain it, you know? The Conjuring 1 and 2, love that we get to spend time with Ed and Lorraine Warren and get to know them as characters. Some more recent ones I've watched are Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I thought that was really good. The Color Out of Space is a Lovecraftian horror with Nicolas Cage in it. What's not to love? Netflix's Fear Street series. Thought that was a really interesting concept, doing the trilogy back to back, having them go back in time with each successive movie to unveil the full scope of the plot, what's going on. Although the accents in the third one do let it down a little bit for me. And now these are horror comedy films, but I think Shaun of the Dead, excellent, and The World's End, also excellent. Controversial take, I actually prefer The World's End to Shaun of the Dead. I think by that point, Edgar Wright, Nick Frost, and Simon Pegg have all evolved and grown as creators. The characters in that one are more compelling and interesting. Definitely one one that deserves a rewatch and deserves a higher level of commendation from the general populace, I would say. So those are all really good movies, but my personal favorite pick for a Halloween movie is The Faculty. This is a sci-fi horror that came out in '98 with a very young pre-Lord of the Rings Elijah Wood in the main role. It certainly has some problems, but overall it is fun and silly and has some really cool concepts in it. It's sort of like the sci-fi horror's answer to Scream, but it just never got the same level of cultural impact that Scream had. The concept is that an alien parasite race begin to take over Elijah Wood's school. They start by infiltrating the faculty lounge and then try to infiltrate all the students. Elijah Wood and a couple other misfits from this general high school populace team up and try to stop the taking over. Also, Robert Patrick, the second Terminator from the best Terminator movie, is one of the bad guys in it, and he absolutely kills it. That is a man who knows how to play a villain. It's by no means a perfect movie, but it's one that I have a really good time with every time I watch it. Because I'm trying to list a lot of things in this video, I might even make a separate video on why I like The Faculty so much and what just makes it tick all the boxes for me personally.
We'll have Halloween on Halloween.
Now I've subtly hinted in various ways that I'm a big fan of alternative music, so I'm gonna be talking about some alternative songs, some pop punk songs that have that Halloween vibe to them. Now the obvious one to go for is of course This Is Halloween by Panic at the Disco from Nightmare Before Christmas, but I'm not picking that one. Get it out of here. I find Panic at the Disco's music very hit or miss for me, and I don't actually like that song, despite the fact it's a Halloween song.
Oh hi, it's Editing Tom from the future again. Now, I was talking there about how I didn't like the song This Is Halloween by Panic at the Disco, but since I recorded that video, a band that I really do like, Crashing Atlas, have put out their own cover of the song, and I really like that cover. It is like everything I didn't like about the original version is gone in this new version, so Crashing Atlas's cover of This Is Halloween has actually made me come around on the song, but specifically their version. It's really good.
So I know what you're thinking, but if it's not This Is Halloween, what is it? Well, I think there are a couple of better options out there. Black Cat by Mayday Parade is an absolute contender. Another song that's worth mentioning is Paranoia by A Day to Remember. This is off Bad Vibrations, their 2016 album. So I think those two are definitely contenders and are worth mentioning, but I need to talk now about a Neck Deep song. And I know what you might be thinking if you're a Neck Deep fan. You might be thinking, oh, he's about to say I hope this comes back to haunt you. That is a Neck Deep song that is frequently appearing on any alternative Halloween playlist you look up on Spotify. You'll probably find that song in amongst the tracks. But here's the thing. I hope this comes back to haunt you, other than having the word haunt in the title and in the chorus. It's not a Halloween song. It's a breakup song. The text of the song is mainly just I'm sad because my girlfriend left me. It's not a spooky song. It doesn't have a spooky vibe. Just other than its title, there's nothing Halloween-y about it, and I don't think that this would grate on me so much if it weren't for the fact that Serpents is right there on the same album. The opening lyrics of Serpents, don't get too close, that place is haunted, fear not the ghost, she sent them running. She sleeps beneath the surface, consorting with the serpents, she strikes without a purpose. Everything about that is Halloween. Just look at the lyrics, look at the lyrics of the song, look at the lyrics. It's a Halloween song, and look at the music video for the song, it's Halloween-y as all hell. Plus the general tone of the song, the general vibe that it has just instrumentally, that also feels Halloween-y, way more Halloween-y than I hope this comes back to haunt you. I have unnecessarily strong opinions about this thing, which is largely trivial and doesn't matter in the end, but it's right there. It's on the same album as I Hope This Comes Back to Haunt You. It's the more Halloween-y song of the two of them. It deserves to be the neck deep Halloween song if any song on their discography does. I guess what I'm trying to say is the best Halloween song is Everybody Backstreet's Back by the Backstreet Boys. Okay, let's talk about shows. Now I don't really have many shows to talk about. In general, I feel like horror, the kind of horror that I like best, works best when it's in a movie, when it's short form format. It's like a ride, you know? It's just an hour and 20 minutes that's a horror movie. I feel like in a show where it's more long format, the impact of the scares can lessen somewhat, which is why something like American Horror Story starts to feel a bit stale. You just become too used to it by the time you're at the 10th episode. It doesn't have the same impact. On the flip side, The Haunting of Hill House takes the approach where it's building up tension and creating an atmosphere of general spookiness throughout its show, and that approach works very well in a show format. It gives time for everything to breathe, to build up the suspense. You get to know the characters, which are more of a focal point in that show, and also in Bly Manor. I haven't seen Midnight Mass yet, which is by the same guy and has a lot of the same cast members. I'm sure it is very good. I'll get around to it at some point. But yeah, I would say Haunting of Hill House is my top pick for Halloween shows. Also Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Gotta appreciate Buffy. Oh, actually, you know what? Throw Death Note in there as well. Death Note counts. The anime, not the Netflix movie. Okay, so those are the shows. Now I want to move on to my wild card. I want to talk about the best horror stage show. And you might be thinking, oh, I know where he's going with this. He's going to start talking about The Woman in Black. Well, I have seen The Woman in Black on stage and it was very good. No, my card is even wilder than that. I'm going to talk about a comedy musical now. You might be thinking, that doesn't sound very scary, but let me convince you otherwise. My favorite Halloween stage show is The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals by Star Kid Productions. And now, if you haven't seen that, it might seem like a strange addition to the list, and I would recommend watching it before I go ahead and talk about it in this section, because it's hard to talk about what really makes it work without spoiling an integral part of it. I do recommend watching it because it's very funny and it's also free. It's on YouTube, they uploaded it themselves. Professionally recorded, edited, good audio sound, and did I mention it is also free. There is no reason not to watch it, really. And like The Faculty, the Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals is another one I could make an entire video about, which I may do. So if you've either already watched it and know what's happened, or if you really don't care about spoilers, I'm now going to talk about The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals and why it is on this list of best Halloween things. So it starts out as a pretty standard comedy musical. Comedy is what these guys are known for. They did the Harry Potter musicals that you've probably seen a meme from one of those in your time. They're known for generally ridiculous humor and parody stuff. And that was what I went into this with the expectation of. The general concept is there's a guy who lives in a regular, non-musical world. He hates musicals, that's an established fact about his character, but then overnight the world that he lives in suddenly turns into a musical world. People start bursting into song and dance on the street, and he's just got to kind of cope with it. And while at first this is played for laughs, one of the first numbers, La Di Da Di Day, is a very catchy, upbeat song. There's a bunch of people on the street who surround him. It's like a flash mob. He is trying to avoid being part of it, but he keeps getting roped into the choreography. It's very good and very funny. Then there's a scene in his work where his boss calls him into the office and starts singing at him, and it's very just strange and he feels very awkward. And then the scene where he goes to the coffee shop is really where the musical shifts gears, because it suddenly stops being played for laughs and starts being played for horror. Basically, as the musical goes on in the first act, it gets revealed that a meteor crashed into this town and it contained an alien pathogen which is taking over the populace and forcing them to do these musical numbers. These people are no longer the people you know and love, they are just singing, dancing zombies, and as it goes on, the songs get more aggressive and violent. At first they're just trying to convince you, oh, sing along with our song, but then when we're getting towards the act break, there's people ripping guts out of other people getting shot, nasty blue goo infecting everyone. Especially because I went into this with the expectations I did, it was just such a curveball of a genre switch. It took me completely off guard, but really hooked me in because it really does a good job of convincing you that actually, yes, it would be terrifying if this happened in real life. If everyone you knew suddenly just started singing and dancing like they're being controlled on puppet strings, trying to get you to join no matter how much you don't want to. It is really, really good. And especially when we come back for Act 2, it is still a comedy the whole way through, and there's a lot of really funny jokes throughout, but it just gets darker and darker, and there's some really horrific scenes and some really well-acted depictions of grief and fear. The chemistry between everyone on stage is really good, and the characters shine through really well, and you really get attached to them. Even the stereotypical office asshole you kind of like. Everything about it just works so well, and I cannot recommend it enough. Also, Star Kid Productions took this and made a sort of sequel to it called Black Friday, which leans much more heavily into the sort of eldritch horror aspect of the whole thing. Also really good. They've also been doing a show called Nightmare Time, which is where they do readings of short stories that are set within Hatchetfield, which is the umbrella term for this series. And they do readings of those over Zoom because they couldn't do a stage production because of COVID. And the whole Hatchetfield series is really good and I really enjoy it, but I do heartily recommend The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. Even if you don't want to watch the rest of it, it does stand on its own, and it is very, very good, and it is also free on YouTube. It feels like the kind of thing you could put on if some friends come around for Halloween, have some drinks, put this on, have a good time. That is my wild card for best Halloween things. It's The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals. Because you don't think it's a horror until suddenly it is. So those I think are my favorite Halloween things. That's my Halloween inspired video. Halloween! Forgot how to do video endings all of a sudden. Let me know some of your favorite Halloween movies or shows or things down in the comments below. What do you like to do every year? Do you have any traditional thing that you watch every year when Halloween comes around? People want to leave horror book recommendations in the comments below. I would absolutely love that as well. I'd love to read some more full-on horror stories. So if you like this video, please give it a like, that really helps. If you want to see more from me, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and as always, I will see you in hell. Sorry, what I meant to say was, thank you all so much for watching this video, and as always, I will see you in my next one.
Just while I'm filming these little inserts, thought you might like to know that this Halloween ghoul over here, I've decided that his name is Harold. His name is Harold Ween.